Okay. Hello. Am I currently live? I am. I don't know why it said that there is an issue, but no matter. Right. As you can probably tell from the title of the stream, I'm not feeling great. I've not been feeling great all week, or all weekend. So yeah, gonna have a nice, easy stream. I don't know why I'm saying this. No one's in here yet, but I'll probably just have to say this all again. My mic seems to be working. Let's put this on Instagram to get people notified that I am currently streaming. Let's share the link. Copy link. Copied. Fantastic. Right. To Instagram, in which I will share the story of me doing this live. Something like that. And then put a little linky link there. It's now Instagram done. So, as mentioned, gonna have a nice, relaxed stream today. Hello, Alex. Thank you for first in the chat. Alex May is okay. Right. Everything is now ready. Cool. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, feeling a bit rough. But been looking forward to just coming in and doing a nice relaxed painting. I need to get rid of this thing so I can. There we go. Okay, now I can see the screen again. Yeah, just gonna do a nice chilled painting session. The prompt for this painting session changed a lot over the last week. Originally, the prompt was going to be to do a still life, because I feel like I don't do enough still lifes, and it's something that I sort of would like to engage with a bit more, especially since I've had some ideas about still lifes that I could do, which would be sort of a bit more particular to me. So sort of wanted to actualize that idea and sort of move on it when I still had the idea, when it was still fresh. But yeah, between postal strikes, I think I ordered it, the object that shall remain anonymous for now. I ordered it about the 21st of November, I want to say, and it came this morning, so I do have it. I just didn't have time to set up for the still life prompt. But other than that, I sort of the prompt that is still going for this week, or is just to paint a Christmas gift or a holiday gift. So presumably a lot of you have potential gifts that you need to be painting for friends or family, and yeah, if it's a gift that you're giving away for free, and it's a painting that you're just giving to a friend, that is enough to count you in the sort of eligibility for this week's giveaway. Originally because I was going to paint a gift for my father, but that plan has also changed because I don't feel well enough to do anything sort of too precious. I'm just going to do sort of a nice chill painting, and chat to you all and hopefully have a grand old time and not make a terrible painting. But yeah, if you work with the prompt, which is to paint a painting to give away for the holiday season, same sort of things as last week, tag me in it, sort of let me know that it's specifically for the giveaway, and yeah, I will be giving away one set of my palette. It will be slightly different from the palette as such, as it is sort of on the board. I think it will be slightly more, have a slightly wider range. I've not actually tested it yet, but I've got some paint coming to test that. So, yeah, if you want to win some paint, come do a painting and tag me in it on the Instas. I see we have Roxy, Alex, Michael, and Nick. So, Michael, just to clarify, you're Captain Nemo, right? That's the same like Michael. Just so I have that in my mind. And I'm gonna get on with some drawing. So yeah, definitely wanted something just a bit less taxing as a reference today. Just something I could sort of do quite casually. Obviously, now that I've said this, I'm going to obviously have a terribly rough time of painting it, but I don't care because I don't feel well, and sometimes you need to expect bad paintings when you're not feeling well. Here we go. Right, let's start actually doing some drawing. Same sort of similar setup as recently. Also, let me know if it's too bad. Hopefully it shouldn't be too bad with when you're watching it at real speed. I've got a new sort of footstool installed in my easel, or on my easel, to try and counteract some plantar fasciitis that I've had, and as a result it makes my easel quite rocky. So let me know if that is sort of too annoying, and I will do something about that for the next stream. But yeah, if I don't have my feet sort of placed evenly, my easel starts to rock quite a lot. So, and once that's sped up, it's quite a lot of movement for the filming. Fortunately, though, everything I've done so far this week or over the weekend isn't worth keeping filming footage wise, because I've sort of been not doing amazing work because I don't feel well. It's amazing how that affects the work. It's good to see that it's the same person. Yep. So just another congratulations on the painting. Really wicked painting. And yeah, we love to see it. Now, this reference has quite a nice sort of haze over it, I guess. It's definitely filtered into making it feel like a lo-fi sort of camera sort of thing happening. So in that, there's a lot of like pinks that are being found, pinks and purples in the sort of highlights, and this sort of really warm purpley pink in some of the highlights, so I'm going to have some fun with that, I think, over the course of the day. I'm also going to be coughing and spluttering a lot, but yeah, it is what it is. So just starting to put down some marks, sort of signifying the hair. I really am just trying to take this very loosely at this point. And yeah, absolutely, you're very very welcome, Michael. That yeah, good painting deserves sort of, you know, being called out sometimes, you know. It's always nice to celebrate things rather than just be a constant like, oh, this painting sucks, which definitely is a lot of the internet space. Cutting in this nose, just looking, trying to find this angle. It seems a little not steep enough. Something like this, maybe. Eye is somewhere in here. Let's find this shadow shape. Now, I sort of keep mentioning when I'm teaching in person that when I'm drawing and when I'm sort of trying to figure things out, I am always trying to actually figure out what it is that I'm currently drawing. So for example, this shadow shape that I've just put in, I've been specifically sort of questioning what that shadow shape is, sort of. So it's like, okay, it's the socket of the eye, but also like beyond that, why is the shadow sort of looking the way it does in this photo? So of course there is, as I mentioned earlier, the fact that there is like a filter happening on the photo to sort of change the tonality of the reference, but it's still the same sort of shadow shape regardless. In fact, it's the exact same shadow shape regardless of the filter. I'm definitely sort of understanding that this is a cast shadow, so we're sort of understanding a bit more about the lighting scenario, about how the light is coming in from above in order to sort of cause the socket to have this eye socket have this sort of cast shadow, which means that the edge around the eyebrow sort of has a specific handling that needs to be dealt with, and when I get there, sort of I'll talk a bit about that. But it's helpful to sort of really have a understanding of exactly what you are drawing, or sort of, if not exactly know what you're drawing, at least understanding enough of what you're drawing that you can sort of decipher what an image is, sort of what's happening in the image, what is causing things to happen, what is causing things to look the way that they are. I also want to say as well to Nick also did a great painting. I'm very, very surprised with the amount of people doing the painting challenges. The Viridian one is great as well. The Viridian Alizarin Crimson challenge has been sort of really lovely to see a lot of different people take that on, and sort of how different people are working through that palette. For those who are sort of following the stories or my Insta stories, you'll know that it turns out that my Vermilion that I painted with in that session, my Viridian that I painted in on that session isn't actually Viridian. It's probably more akin to something like, now I've got this somewhere next to me in this big mass of paint, but it's more like Phthalo Green Lake, which is here. Certainly that's how I've understood the two paints to be reacting against each other. And as a result, sort of, I only know that because I brought a Viridian that I knew to be Viridian, and was able to test it against the Viridian that I had. Whether or not it's just because the age has sort of discolored, I don't know. I doubt that would be the question. I'm very much more thinking that it's along the lines of it just being a hue, instead of it being a true pigment. So sort of doesn't have that blue undertone that the Viridians, that the paint that the Viridian paint that other people's paintings seem to have. I definitely noticed it very obviously within some of the art chats that some of the experiments that Cherry was doing, that definitely really showed that it was very, very different to the one that I had. That's what prompted me to buy a new one. And then we sort of just were chatting about that as a pigment anyway. And yeah, it definitely sort of, at least I came to the conclusion that the Viridian that I was using wasn't Viridian genuine. So at some point I'm gonna do another sort of hit of that palette, try it again, see where I get to with using those paints, using that like a proper Viridian, and how that changes. So yeah, sort of hopefully that will be a nice painting session. Hey Nadine, nice to see you. Just doing a nice casual painting today. Now, again, really sort of trying at this point to best resolve the drawing. Throw my pencil everywhere. To best resolve the drawing at this sort of stage. Especially because I'm sort of very, very aware that this painting is going to be like this will be a single session for this painting, so it will be finished whether it likes it or not at the end of this stream. No, yeah, Alex, definitely, like it's not necessarily a green that is very sort of popular, I guess. I definitely don't see it a lot in painting sessions. I don't see it a lot with people talking about palettes online, but it definitely does have some good utility. I'm sort of curious as to see if anyone does have it in their standard palette. But yeah, it does really have some nice qualities, especially when you mix it with the sort of transparency of the Viridian and the transparency of the Alizarin Crimson. They go hand in hand quite well to sort of make quite a nice range of colours that you can hit. Now, let's put in that tapestry, I guess. Hi, Scaleless. Yeah, hopefully, I hope I start feeling better soon too, as well. But yes, thank you very much for the kind words. And yeah, let's what they say, excited for the painting. Let's prepare to be disappointed. No, I am confident enough that I can do a semi-decent painting regardless of health. I have painted many times when I have been unwell in the past. I'm sure I will paint many times in the future when I'm also unwell. it's more just stamina than anything. Not to be the person that just comes online and complains as well, but it's actually one of the worst things about it at the moment is my feet. I have terrible pain in my feet, because apparently as soon as you start to close in on your 30s, your body's just like, hey, if we're gonna not stop working, have fun dealing with that. But definite pain in my feet, and with that pain in my feet, it's very distracting, which does make it difficult to be making difficult decisions repainting. So that definitely is a bit of an issue, but again, it's part of the, you've got to deal with it sometimes. And I wanted to just stream regardless, and just decided to make it a bit easier for myself rather than doing anything sort of super specific with the prompt, just having some chill painting time with y'all. Now, let's see if I can sort out this. What needs to be sorted? This hair shape is different. This angle of the shirt is different as well. That's why that feels off. There's bigger shadow shape there. No, I'm very thankful for your words. No, but yeah, it's sort of. Sometimes it's a good exercise as well to sort of paint when you aren't in the mood to be painting. Again, I sort of, over the course of the last year or so, I sort of got very interested in this idea of like the metabolic cost of painting, sort of like how much brain power does it take to be painting, because you're juggling a lot of things. Like, not only are you hopefully observing very intently, you're also doing a lot of translation, you're also sort of doing a lot of imagining in what marks might be looking like. It's a very labor intensive sort of, or body intensive experience. So it's definitely one of the things that, like, I expect painting to be a big energy expenditure. Like, regardless of when I'm painting, I'm sort of expecting that to be the case. So generally, it means that when I'm painting or understanding that I'm going to be painting, I sort of want to make sure that I'm like preparing myself correctly. So having sort of enough water, or having enough fluids in general, having coffee if that sort of is the thing of the day, and just making sure that I'm sort of giving my body the things it needs to sort of create the painting, because it is quite a difficult thing. And then when it comes to painting when you're ill, it's sort of same sort of thing, but you're just sort of, you have less energy to sort of begin with, and as a result, that sort of may force you to have to make decisions that you wouldn't normally make in order to sort of resolve the painting in a way that is shorter than normal, because you just don't have the same level of energy, or at least something along the lines of that. Nadine says the drawing is already so nice you could totally stop it. Well, it's nice to know that if all else fails across the day, I can just leave it at this and sort of, or at least have this memory of this painting at this stage. Like, it wasn't always bad. There were some nice moments, but no, yeah. Hopefully, this shouldn't be sort of too difficult. One of the things that I've also done in sort of preparation for today, or throughout the day, sort of knowing that I'm a bit maybe lower energy going into the painting. So I've just been looking at the reference a bit, sort of just trying to understand different elements of it, trying to understand what sort of points I need to be potentially careful of in terms of my drawing, identifying sort of mistakes that I commonly make within drawing, and sort of understanding where that is happening in this reference so I can pay extra attention to that. Let's bring this eye a bit more open. I can't really see tons of detail in this eye, so I'm going to have to use some of my understanding to create that. But that is fine. Something like that. And something like that. Well, hi, Michael. Nice to see you. Nice to have you here. It doesn't. New people always welcome. You chose obviously the best stream to get involved in when I'm feeling quite so ill, but we're gonna have fun anyway. I'm gonna do a great painting. As always, please do just ask questions if you have questions in mind, as well. Sort of, I'm quite happy to chew through some answers, chew through some questions, and to keep me company. Oh, Michael, you're far too kind for other Michael. Captain Nemo, you're far too kind. It's a pleasure to do the streams. I like chatting. I like seeing people doing work. I like sort of engaging with audiences in that way. And yeah, it's just nice to meet other people or sort of start to talk to other people in this sort of format in which they're also interested in potentially experimenting with palettes, just sort of understanding as a community sort of how we might be able to navigate oil paint or painting in general, and sort of increase everybody's ability together. Also, I've mentioned it before, and I'll mention it again. Like, there's definitely sort of this element that with other people that I've seen doing streams, like Arube, for example, even though in my mind, Arube is sort of at that level already. Sort of, I already expect him to be doing like fantastic paintings. It's been really interesting to sort of engage with this idea that, like, yeah, even though he's very, very talented already, that 2 years of consistent streaming, 2 years of consistent painting had just seen such a marked improvement in his paintings. And I just think it's one of the best like testimonies to it. Doesn't matter sort of what point you're starting at, you can consistency will always improve, and that's part of the reason. It's like, nope, yep, I've got to do the good streaming things, because it's definitely one part of the week that I definitely separate for painting. Like, it's always just going to be painting time, and as such I sort of need to use it as painting time. So palette today, both Nick and Michael, is quote unquote the Golunsky palette, which I've got a few friends sort of testing at the moment, and is actually the giveaway for this stream. So if you sort of over the next week, on my Insta, I'll be, again, like all the other paintings, sort of, if you participate in this week's streaming, prompt, which is to paint a gift for someone for the holidays, and you tag me in that, I'll be actually giving away one set of this palette, which is titanium white. It's a very specific titanium white. It's Griffin Alkyd titanium white. The Griffin Alkyd essentially just means that it's sort of like white paint with liquid already mixed in with it, so it dries very quickly. That in combination with the paper allows me to work on sort of a few paintings at once, which I definitely prefer. I sort of like to take things to a sort of a certain stage and then let them sit for a bit, let the paint sort of dry out a bit, and then go back in top and rework on it. Other than the white, which you can sort of swap out for any white, we have Indian yellow. We have Indian yellow. We have permanent orange. Permanent orange, which is also sometimes known as Winsor orange if you buy it from Winsor & Newton. Same pigment, just different names. And then we also have a phthalocyanine turquoise, which has white mixed into it. The phthalocyanine turquoise that I'm giving away doesn't have white mixed into it, so it will be darker than that. And then also this Intense Pink by Charvan, or Charvin, which is pigment number 122. I don't know if you can see it on that, on the stream. Again, the pigment number that I will be giving away will be magenta, which is also PR122. They handle slightly different to this pink, but I have that to give away. So I am going to sort of experiment with the palette beforehand as well, just to make sure it is capable of reaching what this palette can reach. If not, then I'll swap out the colours for whatever colour doesn't hit that. But yeah, if you're interested in winning this palette or winning this sort of set of colours, all you need to do is do a painting and tag me on it in Instagram. Do a painting of a gift. Originally I was going to do a painting for my dad, which I thought of in April of this year, because I thought when I want to say it's Kristen, might be Kristen, started the Kanyo April sketchbook challenge. I originally had intended to do it in that, and then I just never did. I got very into the Kanyo Film It challenge, which I think happened shortly afterwards. But yeah, sort of got distracted by that instead. But I sort of still intend to do that painting. I still intend to do the live stream prompt from what was meant to be this week as well, the still life. I'm just not doing it at the moment. I'll probably rearrange that for next week or something. Michael, how did I what was the process for narrowing down to these pigments? So I must admit, I've never been sort of one that's been too concerned about pigments. I've also never been too concerned about things like color strings. I like it when other people do it. I find it very sort of, it's just not for me, that sort of mentality of paint. And I really like to explore palettes and paint through just throwing them into an existing palette, and then sort of seeing where you can get with that, sort of what it falls short on, what it's really good at, what it's bad at, what it works well with. And with the Galansky palette, which it sounds ridiculous calling it that, but it would be very cool to have a palette named after you. Anyway, with this palette, I just sort of had been using a lot of these colors in the past. It was actually the Intense Pink that really changed a lot of the interaction. So I got this for a painting, which I think is actually in this book. Let me see if I can just quickly find that painting. One day, not today, one day I will do a tour of the sketchbooks. Yeah, this painting, I ended up buying this Intense Pink for. It was one of the first paintings that I specifically went out and bought pigment for. With a lot of paintings in the past, I sort of have always had this mentality of like, I will not go and buy a specific paint. I will go and paint with what I can, and what I reach is what I can reach, and that's sort of the limit of what I can do with that palette, which was just really a rule that I had implemented myself, like, and it had absolutely no sort of like real world bearing or anything. There was no one like checking it. It was just really my own sort of stubbornness, I guess, that stopped me from having that as part of my practice. Anyway, for that painting, which is called Memory Machine, I decided, no, I'm actually going to buy some paint, because I'm struggling to get the sort of like intensity of pink that I want. So let's see if I allow myself to do this for a painting, sort of what the results are. I got the pink, and sort of noticed that it was very different from other PR122s that I had painted on or painted with. Sort of it's the same pigment that's in Michael Harding's Magenta. In fact, like, I can grab these three colours. Sorry, I've got my brush in my mouth. I probably shouldn't. Yeah, so these three pigments. Oh, sorry. Yeah, these three pigments are all PR122. So we have Quincinadrone, Fuchsia, Magenta, and Intense Pink. Now, as you can see, they've all got hand paint or painted sort of examples of what the pigment hits. They're all very, very different. I was told that this was just this pigment with white in it, but not only does this pigment not have white on the material list, which isn't always the case, this pigment's also quite transparent. So if you add white to a paint or white to a pigment, you lose transparency, or you start to lose transparency at the very least, and that paint just doesn't feel like it is suitably transparent enough to have white mixed in with it. Once I got that paint out, and I sort of got that pigment on my palette, I sort of very much noticed a different engagement with it as a palette, and then as a result of that I was like, okay, there is something different about this. I came across Indian Yellow when I was in Margate recently, back in over the summer, painting or with a fantastic set of artists who I have lots of time and lots of love for. Hilary Butterworth, Milo Hartnell, and Seppi DeMeyer, and also Alex Wilby. And when I was at Hilary's house, she used Indian yellow on a painting of someone spilling beans in a kitchen floor. Really, really lovely painting. I don't know if it's on social medias yet, but sort of I saw how Indian yellow worked in that painting, and I was just instantly like, okay, there is something very, because I'd never used it before, so I sort of started using that a bit. Again, sort of understanding that there is a very powerful it's a very powerful but transparent color, which generally is quite nice to paint with. I find it quite enjoyable to paint with a lot of transparencies. Um, and then as a result of that, I sort of started to put a few colors together. I originally had this, but with a phthalo blue and a lemon yellow, and then I sort of decided that I didn't need the phthalo blue, and then I also decided that I didn't really need the lemon yellow. There are some paintings which I'm very interested in doing with just this palette. There are some paintings that I'm also very interested in doing with this, plus like a lemon yellow, a bismuth yellow, something like that. But I'll sort of leave that for now. I've sort of got enough to experiment with this as it is. But yeah, so, and then I sort of whittled it down to these 4 colors, did a painting with it, immediately was like, yes, this works really well. I'm sort of able to reach quite a lot with this, and reach it within a sort of quite specific, I don't know, sort of vibe, I guess, which just sort of suited the work quite well. What has been interesting, sorry, I'll finish talking now, sort of, I can see questions stacking up, but I'll sort of continue rambling about this a bit and then I'll move on. What I found in interesting in sort of investigating this palette afterwards, and sort of understanding maybe why I like it and maybe what makes it work for me, is that between the permanent orange and the phthalocylene turquoise, you can make, I've shown it a few times, you can make sort of a really wide range of very dark but still quite chromatic purples, which allows you to sort of navigate some greys and sort of move through a grey space with this palette. The Indian yellow and the phthalocylene turquoise sort of work really well as like extreme warmth and extreme cool, so that sort of balances out quite well. The intense pink comes in when it's needed and sort of really mellows out some colors. If you add it to the phthalocylene turquoise, it sort of starts to look a bit, I say this very, very loosely, a bit ultramarine-y. It's not massively ultramarine-y, but it's definitely like warming up the phthalocylene turquoise, which sort of adds a lot of utility to that. So I definitely just became quite interested in it as a palette in general, and then sort of have continued to explore it, continue to sort of push it, try it in a lot of different painting scenarios. In the new year, when I start to show a lot of the work that I've been working on over the last few months, there's a lot of painting that I've done with this palette, which I'm really surprised that I've been able to sort of hit those points with it. So yeah, just been a fun palette to sort of experiment with. I also think that this sort of talk, I guess, is something that I've not really been subject to. I've not really seen lots of people sort of engaging with people being like, other than like classical palettes like Zorn's palettes, I've not seen many people sort of being like, hey, try this palette out, see what you get. So I definitely sort of want to start that conversation, because if loads of people can start using this palette and take it further than I can, and sort of figure out things that I hadn't thought out with it, then that's fantastic. I sort of want that to be able to help me work. I want it to work for them. But anyway, that's a different time for a different matter. So Nick, my pigment number for my Indian Yellow is, so I've got the Michael Harding one, and it's PY83 Dairy Lamide. So it's this this one. Yeah, very transparent, drying slow, light fastness good, tint power very high. Tint power meaning how strongly it affects colors when it's added into paintings. Hi Sophia, painting along today. Nice to see what you're painting. I'm not feeling amazing, but I am feeling better now that I'm chatting to some painters in the internet space. Now, Nick, obviously, very worth knowing or pointing out, I am trying out, or I have got coming, the Winsor & Newton version of Indian Yellow. After winning the Winsor & Newton prize, obviously, I'm going to be trying to engage with their oil paints and sort of see which ones I like, which ones I don't like. I have picked up, again, the equivalent of the palette from them, and I'll be giving that a go, and that's what I'll be giving away, one set of those in this scenario. I will be giving away another set of that at some point. I'm currently waiting on someone who's currently ill, like to sort of be volunteering to help me with some of my work, in which there will be a newsletter that we're doing together, which she's very gracefully sort of offered to do when she is a bit better. And the other way to win the other set that I'll be giving away will be to join up for the newsletter whenever that is. At this rate, I presume it will be next year though. So at the moment, this will be the only set that I'm giving away. Now I'm just gonna finish blocking this in. Okay, that's quite interesting. Yeah, I'll definitely sort of keep you updated with how I get on with that paint. Now, please, I wanna just let me just grab a thing. Sorry, my ill brain is very addled at the moment. I'm very sort of spaced out. So you please bear with me. I'm just going to go get a cup of tea because my throat is sore. I will be back in 5 minutes. It probably won't be 5 minutes. Please, whilst I'm gone, stack up a lot of questions and I will regale you with lots of interesting conversations when I'm back. Sorry about that. All right. I'm back with a nice warm beverage. Oh, nice, Nick. Nice to see that you've experimented with the palette. What paintings did you do? So if you ping them across to me on Insta, that would be great. Love to see them. And also, Todd M. Casey's book, Oil Painter's Handbook. I definitely haven't heard. It doesn't ring a bell, but I am very interested in sort of starting to do a bit more reading. Well, I don't know. I'm sort of very torn about reading things. There are lots of things which I don't think are very useful to read about. Sometimes I think that pigment is something that needs to be tested and experimented with in like real life painting scenarios, like actual painting scenarios where you're painting, not just like trying to paint swatches or something. Otherwise you don't really understand how the paint reacts with everything around it. So it yeah, I do want to read more about stuff, but also I sort of also just want to slap paint down and sort of test it out that way. I did read a book. I have read a book once. No, I read a book when I was writing my thesis, when I was studying, by James Elkins. That I did find it quite useful, called What Painting Is. I did think that that was quite a nice sort of like book that sort of talks about the alchemy of pigments, I guess. Other than that, obviously, in terms of like reading materials that I would suggest, anything that James Gurney has written, I think is really interesting. Sort of, he is one of the best people exploring sort of or explaining light, I think, in a lot of scenarios, or at least for my brain, that is. I think that he's very good for that. I know that Charlie Pickard and Nathan Fawkes have just done a book together about colour or a bit of writing. Charlie is definitely an artist that I like to chat pigment with. We teach at the same school, and he used to teach at Lara a lot, and occasionally I go and paint in his studio in one of his spaces in Crystal Palace. But yeah, very, very knowledgeable about paint and pigment, and one of the sort of like hopefully artists that I might get in on a stream at one point, which would be fun. Yeah, like I think it's interesting, the James Gurney's colouring. Like, I think that a lot of people can get turned off by the cover, because the colour is like, it's like a bird, like what I presume is like a fantasy bird type of thing, because a lot of his work does do sort of deal within those like fantasy elements. There is also a book by him that's called like, it's like imagination and painting, is something along the lines of that. But again, that's really good as well. Sort of, but again, the cover, it can sort of. I've suggested it to people before in the past and be like, no, this is fantastic. This is a book worth reading. And then they sort of ask me on Instant, they like send me a screenshot of the cover, and they're like, "This one, really?" And like, yep, that's the one. That's got information about color that sort of just will blow your mind, especially when it's sort of talking about contextual colors and sort of how important it is to have context around colors in order for them to be reading correctly. Sort of really really interesting sort of stuff. Um, Other books as well. Richard Smith's Everything I Know About Alla Prima. That's always a sort of interesting slash useful read. When people talk about it being sort of like the tome of oil painting, I don't know if I necessarily agree. I think it's really good at explaining what it explains, but like I don't think that you could ever consider writing a book that is useful for all points of oil painting. It's just so variable and really isn't that definable. But it definitely is a fantastic book. Yeah, it's James Gurney as well. I never know if it's him joking about. Um, but when he talks about his like unicycle paintings, um, like I 100% can imagine him being the sort of person to do plein air painting and ride a unicycle at the same time. Even though in my mind, I don't think that that's possible. I imagine that if anyone can do it, it's James Gurney type thing. Um, but yeah, I'm sort of desperate to know if he actually does do that or if it's just like a skit that he did for Instagram. But as mentioned, I definitely feel like he is one of the only artists that I would believe if you told me that they were doing that. Um, yeah, like and um, what you say, Michael, about Arube in different pigments, and paper. Like I'm just painting on paper here. Like I think that it's a very nice sort of material to work on. Very nice to just sort of. It's the thing with moleskin. Um, is that it's a good quality material, but it's also sort of not too precious. Like if I completely ruin a painting or something, I'm not going to be like that annoyed with it. But when I ruin a painting on like a £60 canvas or something, that's definitely a bit like, oh, that hurts. I I saw on Moleskin's Instagram stories a couple of months ago that in their like New York headquarters, they've got like an oversized Moleskin, and it must be like I don't know, at least a meter tall, um, and I really like I inquired as to whether or not they made them or if you could get one. So I think it would be fantastic to just have a book that size with loads of paintings in. I'd make it like an entire year's worth of work out of it, just doing massive paintings in this massive moleskin. Um, but sadly, they do not have those to buy. And as Neil pointed out to me at the time, which I hadn't really thought about, that it'd probably be like £1,000 in just shipping because it's a massive book, and books are heavy. And I was like, oh yeah, that is unreasonable. That is not something that I could feasibly do. But um, hey, if Moleskin want to hit me up, which I mean, they liked an Instagram post today, so that's something. But yeah, Moleskin, give me one of those books, and I'll do work with it. Um, Shilling aside, still just sort of working towards having this surface completely covered. Now, one of the other things as well that I've noticed through streams and sort of um, access to streams, a I I feel like there's a lot of artists that sort of can get brought up that people don't know of, and I think that that's really exciting. I also think that that works both ways, and that sort of people can suggest artists as well, and it's just a good way to sort of have that as a resource, and sort of explore ideas. So there was a painter that got suggested in one of the Kanyo chats the other day, and I'd never heard of them, and I just love about hearing about, especially from the Impressionist sort of period, just painters that I don't know. It's the same way that, like, in my Spotify Wrapped this year, there's a band called Dismemberment Plan that was my most listened to band, and they're from the 90s. I'd never heard of them until I think it was like August or something, in which they then became my most listened to artist this year. But I love sort of discovering stuff from an era that you already love. Like, I love music from the 90s. It's very nostalgic for me. And sort of we always had a lot of like music in the house when I was a child. So there's lots of music from that era that I'm like, yes, this hits the good parts of my brain. And to be able to discover new bands that are in that sort of realm, but are all fresh to you, is just the best experience. It's the same with painting. Like, I love the Impressionistic period. I love what they were trying to do. I sort of want to be responding to them as well. Sort of, I very much understand my work as a sort of like continuation, I guess, of things that they were doing, or at least that's what I'm aiming for, or aiming to sort of have eventually. Oh, Alex, you've got to send that to me over Insta. I've got to check that out at some point. Really annoyingly as well, I tried to, at the moment, or at least when I sent, I really wanted some friends to send me their Spotify Wrapped, because again, I just, any excuse to sort of listen to music or explore new music or whatever. At the moment, well, when I sort of last looked, there was a bug that meant you couldn't send your Wrapped to someone. The link that they would click would just open up in their own Wrapped. So I'm hoping that that gets resolved so I can bother some people about their Spotify Wrapped, and listen to all of their guilty pleasures that they listen to all year. But yeah, there's something very satisfying about discovering new things from a period that you really love, be it painting or music. Yeah, I've made sketchbooks in the past out of paper that I like. The only issue is that I have learned that through sort of several attempts, I guess, there'll be a scenario in which it'll be like, so take for example the when I was doing my own Glycee printing here, which was years ago now, years and years. But for the paper that I was buying for my Glycee prints were coming in rolls. I think it was definitely 10 meters long, and I think maybe 90 centimeters wide. About, no, 60 centimeters wide. Sorry, it was 24 inches, 60 centimeters wide. And I thought, yeah, you save money doing it this way. I can then sort of have more control over it. I can cut the paper to the size that I need it to. Blah 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 blah. When you or when I actually come to handling paper that's that big, it's so difficult to sort of keep it looking tidy. Um, it's so easy to bend, so easy to sort of crease, to get damaged at the edges. And every time I've sort of tried to engage with that, so I have always wanted to sort of do bigger um, charcoal work. I'm sure that at some point I'm going to be doing some charcoal streams, but again, that's not going to be this year. But I wanted to get sort of bigger paper, bigger surfaces for it, and like you, I brought a 10 meter roll of Bristol board um, from it's a Strathmore Bristol paper, and yeah, again, same thing. You try and cut a sheet that's 100 centimeters long, and it's rolling up on itself, so you've got to put weights on it to try and keep it straight, and then the weights a day, and then get the paper day, and it's all just a big like faff. And yeah, I'd really, really just like it to be sort of done. Um, but yeah, it's the constant issue of big paper. It's so difficult to sort of manipulate and keep it looking not terrible. Oh, they sound really nice, Michael. I there was a really old family friend of mine that used to make really really lovely leather bound sketchbooks, um, and she gifted me one many years ago now, and I used the sketchbook inside, and you could like take them out and replace them and stuff. And I ended up taking out the using the leather recently for a video that I made. So I made a stamp, or like I say a stamp. It's like a what's the word I'm looking for? Thank you very much as well, by the way, for bearing with me in my very tired, ill brain. Um, I made a press for letters in order to be able to emboss my 734, which is my signature, or one of my signatures. Um, and for the embossing, I sort of needed proper leather, and I actually used the leather from that, so you can see it in the sketchbook video that or the stamping video that I put up recently. Now, starting to sort of move inwards with the face, definitely sort of not making anything too quick decision wise, just sort of airing out some possible ideas or possible color placement, see if they're working, see if I need to tone down the color at all, and go from there. So again, it's got this photo in the new year. I'm sort of trying to get a few opinions on it, and what better opinions to get than the people who are actually watching the stream. If people would like me to have the reference up somewhere in the stream, obviously I would have to then have permission from the person that I am painting, sort of having their reference up on the page. It's not something that I've wanted to do yet, because it's something that, like, no, I just need to make this as simple as possible. For this sort of starting off, don't need to overcomplicate something that's already complicated, like sort of starting to stream and trying to paint and trying to talk and sort of like, yeah, not failing at painting live is quite a consumption of thought. But yeah, this idea of brain, work with me, please, brain. Having the reference up on the page or on the screen obviously means that I can sort of point out parts that I'm working on and point out bits that I'm also sort of like how I'm explaining them, or why I'm trying to explain them, or sort of why this is not working because I can't hit this, so I've got to think about it like that, something along the lines of that. I will sort of engage in that in the new year, if people want that. It won't be immediately, because immediately during the first month of the new year, which is also known as January to some people, I am doing a series of videos or a series of streams, which I will be introducing, hopefully, some people to the Kenyo Film It Challenge, and all of the streams in January every Monday will be scenes from movies that will be streaming, so that will be very fun, and we can talk about some paintings and talk about some films, and it will be a good time. I'm also, I haven't asked her yet, potentially going to get Hillary on next week, sort of just thinking about this. For next week, I am hosting Hillary Butterworth and her husband here at my house, which is over Monday. So if there is a stream on Monday, it will be shorter, because we'll be chatting and playing games probably. But if she's game, then maybe we can just have a quick conversation about some work or something over that on the stream, and just have her in my studio and we can chat. It'll be fun. But yes, I do need to ask her first, so don't quote me on that. We will see. Oh, Michael, it would be an absolute pleasure if to have one, if you're sure. If you don't, if you're sure to send it, that would be lovely. And yeah, I think it's probably the 4th video on my Insta at this point. The 4th video, which isn't one of the pinned videos. But yeah, which I'm really pleased with. I'm sort of happy with the effect of how that looked. Again, I sort of had that in mind for videos and sort of presenting paintings for a long time. Sort of the idea of giving them stamps and sort of giving them names and giving these giving them playlists and songs to listen to sort of change the vibe. And yeah, I definitely sort of have been chewing on that for the probably like parts of that idea for I don't know, maybe 4 years. But the idea was that like I really like getting, it was something that I experienced younger as well, when I was younger, which you definitely don't get in the same way anymore. But like when you would open up a video game, or you'd open up a vinyl record or a CD, Vinyls were something that I engaged with like a year ago. I'm not old enough to sort of originally remember vinyls. Um, but there is this really lovely experience that you have when you sort of open up the packet, or the sort of wrapping, and then suddenly there's a bunch of extras in there, and it's our artwork, sleeves that are printed, little like cards that get put inside. It can be the disc itself, like the vinyl itself, um, lore that's in instruction booklets, whatever it is. I just think it's such a nice like world building sort of thing. It just contextualizes the way that you're receiving that painting, and I thought like, hey, I'd love to be able to give the equivalent of this um to a painting, so that like when someone buys a painting, um if anyone ever buys a painting, that they also get a bunch of cool like little bits that sort of contextualize the painting a bit, um and sort of just a few extra things that go along with the painting. um and yeah, sort of, I think I'm gonna be trying to expand on it a bit more, um sort of in the coming months. But it definitely, like, the stamps, sort of to get them cut and stuff, are an expense. And then sort of, if you're looking at doing a few different designs, then it becomes a few different expenses, and then suddenly you're looking at like a few £100 to sort of do it. So it's like, yeah, let's do this in segments. But sort of now that the base part of it is all there, sort of with the Letraset, which I've also been collecting for like half a decade at this point, just every Letraset that I could find. Well, not every Letraset, because some of them were so expensive. But yeah, just searching eBay for Letraset in order to sort of just have a stockpile, so that I could do this, essentially, sort of give them handmade titles and authenticate them in a way. And yeah, I'm sort of quite pleased with how that came out. So if you haven't checked out that video, not to be the guy that's like, hey, check out my videos, do check that out, because yeah, that felt quite big in terms of stuff, in terms of like, oh yes, this is how I'm deciding to engage with painting, presenting my paintings on Instagram as well. I don't know, there's lots of conversations to be had about this sort of space in which more people will see my paintings through Instagram than they'll see them in real life. That has been the case for several years at this point. I think that is the case for most artists. Even the paintings that I have at the mall galleries in London at the moment, like central London, or it's like it's like on Trafalgar Square in the Mall, however you want to say it. Busy bit of London. You can expect maybe a few thousand people to walk through that space and see those paintings. Whereas online, I know that those paintings have been seen in excess of like 80,000 times, through various platforms, various streams. So it's like, yeah, people are seeing this version of the painting a lot more than they're seeing the physical reaction of the painting. So I've got to pay as much attention to how I present the painting in a digital space where more people will see it, than I do as to a physical space where people will also see it. But it's like, they aren't, you can work on both. You can give both a really nice presentation. You don't need to sacrifice presenting one in order to sort of present it in a specific manner. So I was like, okay, let's try and not just present these in a way of like, okay, I'm just taking a photo and throwing it up, which is fine. It's what I've done for a lot of my work in the past, but I just sort of wanted to level that up, I guess, sort of make it a bit more unique, a bit more personal, give a bit more of an experience for seeing them online. I don't know. I think it's an interesting sort of space to navigate because, yeah, we are giving that experience to people when we present a piece of artwork on Instagram. We are saying, here is a piece of work. I would like you to spend time looking at it, please. And a lot of people will only see that painting that one time, and it's sort of like that's the one that they will remember. So if they remember if you upload a really like badly cropped photo or something, then that's probably the sort of version that they're going to remember, and that's not the sort of like best for how you want. I presume a lot of people don't want to just present their work in that way. I presume that because a lot of people's work is personal, that they do want to sort of give it the right sort of proper presentation, which means engaging with some of the unique elements that Instagram can provide, using Reels to sort of highlight different parts, using sort of the elements of, okay, what do photos allow us to do that seeing photos in real life don't? It's like, okay, well, we can highlight different areas of so Alex asking in the chat, because I know a lot of people are painting alongside as well, and not necessarily keeping an eye on the chat, especially if you're on a phone. Alex asking, what's a painting that shocked you when you saw it in real life that wouldn't be the same on the screen? So when I went to see the Sickert show at the Tate Britain with Seppi de Meyer and Peter Salmi, really, really fun time walking around that exhibition. It was also during the time when the Queen's queue was on, so we got to show Seppi, tourist Seppi. I think it was the end of the queue that was by the Tate Britain. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And a lot of Sikich work is very, very different on screens than it is in real life. I have a lot of thoughts about that show. I quite like Sickert. I really like Whistler, and Whistler was sort of a mentor to Sickert. And there definitely is lots of elements of Whistler that come through in Sickert's work. And that show also had a few Whistlers in, and it's always a pleasure to see Whistler's paintings. Really great artist. And there were paintings in that show that I have seen in real life, and I've seen in online before. And there were paintings that I was like, this feels really different. And there was a few, especially in the nude room, when there were a lot of Sickert's nude paintings, that I remembered being completely different in terms of color temperature. And lo and below, sort of talking to Seppi and Peter, getting an image up, and like the official image that is on the Tate's website as well, and it being taken in a completely different lighting scenario. So the photos online were really clearly taken in a very, very cool light, very, very blue sort of tint to the photo, sort of like, I imagine at least sort of like 6,000 Kelvin type thing, that sort of intensity of blue. Whereas in reality, the lights in that show were very warm, so all of the paintings looked very, very different in that scenario. I was actually quite disheartened when I was in that show, because obviously you're at the Tate Britain. The Tate Britain has really lovely building, in which they can show their work. There were a lot of sort of like messy parts of the walls where the paintings were hung, which I found really distracting. That was sort of like painted over, like taped and painted over. And it's like, okay, whatever. Like, sometimes you've got to deal with things that you've got to deal with. What really annoyed me with that show, sorry, it's just a rant about that show, is the Tate Modern and Tate Britain are definitely sort of have access to a lot of like utilities in order to make their life a lot easier. By that I mean sort of how the paintings are lit, how the paintings are shown, how the paintings are hung, the space that they've got, and there were so many paintings, especially in the nude room, where it's, you know, you've got really tall ceilings, and they were so badly lit that you could barely see the paintings. They were just had so much glare, and it made me so angry, because I have like spent a lot of time trying to figure out how I can best take photos of my work, again for the same ideas as mentioned earlier, sort of like I'm trying to present work to a bunch of people. I'm trying to sort of understand that's the one sort of point in which people see it, that's the one that sort of sticks with them. Let's not make it a bad experience type thing. And I feel I can take better photos than the photos that I saw on the Tate's website. I think I can light paintings better than the paintings that the Tate Britain had lit, and it just was hugely frustrating because they're, unfortunately, like, if you're standing at a painting and you physically cannot see the painting because there is too much glare coming off that surface, like, that's your interaction with the painting. Like, there's very little you can do about it to sort of change it. And there was one painting in particular, which is sort of like a painting of Whistler, a painting of Sickert painting somebody, and then that person is also in a mirror, so you can see the reflection of the person, and then Sickert's hand type thing. You sort of see the back of Sickert's hand, and I was practically lying down to try and find an angle that wasn't so glary, but no, yeah, it was just impossible to see, regardless of however you sort of looked at it. And again, it's because the lights were too high. The lights were too high, so they were causing too much glare. It was too sharp an angle for the lights to sort of be facing the painting in that manner. And yeah, just, you know, it's a bit sort of like, oh, this, I was expecting this to be presented better, and it's not like this is a small show, or like, I think the tickets were 17 quid or something as well, so it's like a paid experience as well to sort of have badly presented work. Yeah, like, glare is definitely really, really annoying, JN, especially when you're trying to take photos. like it becomes a sort of like question of how to deal with it. I do have a video script done, or sort of in the process. It's nearly done, which is part of the January videos that I'm sort of working on, or hopefully working on, that will hopefully come out in January. Let's not get too far ahead of myself, because there's a lot of work to do left. But about sort of taking photos of work, and trying to control the light, and it is really difficult. And there are sorts of like a lot of ways that glare can interact and sort of disrupt the viewing of the painting. The way that I sort of get around it, obviously I'm painting here. I'm painting here in a lit scenario. My paint isn't glary. The paint on my surface isn't glary. And that's because, you know, when you're filming wet paint being put down, you've got to be very, very aware of how to deal with glare, because it being wet, it is more reflective, thus more glary. And I just have two studio photography lights. They're LED. I've got them about 2 foot away from the ceiling, and I've got them bounced up at the ceiling and bouncing back down onto the surface. That's the only lighting scenario that I have in this room, apart from like my Mac, but that's indirect to the painting scenario, so you wouldn't necessarily have that light interacting with this surface. I'm sure it does a little bit, but not enough to sort of warrant worrying about it too much. And yeah, that's how I sort of deal with that lighting scenario, is or sort of deal with the glare in this scenario, is that I have only reflected light. So all of the light that is on this surface is bouncing down. Within that, there's been sort of issues at figuring out how to sort of get things properly exposed, and that things are not too light, not too dark. And in the sort of work of doing that, photographing work has become a bit more simple. When I take photos, it's a very similar scenario where I have two studio lights pointing up at the ceiling, and I only have the reflected light sort of to take photos. The way that I deal with it in oil paintings, when I'm trying to capture sort of the a part of the painting, I guess, that sort of allows it to be read as painting, is that I will offset the lights. In fact, let me just put this mark in here and grab a pencil, because this will be easier to sort of show, so we can see this part of the painting. Yeah, so I have, how best to describe this, I have my easel, which upstairs is like one of the tripod easels with the painting on it. I am specifically wanting to know that the sort of a rough center point. If I'm taking lots and lots of photos of lots of work, I will do it much more specifically. Most of the time I am able to sort of eyeball it quite well at this point. I want to know where the center of this painting is, because I want to make sure that the center of my camera's lens is roughly in line with this, because if it's not in center, then you're going to get some sort of visual distortion, albeit sort of, it might be bowing, it might be stretching, it might be tilting, it might be distorting it in variety of different manners, but I want to know the center of that. I also want to know that this painting is vertical. So I have a tiny spirit level, so I have the spirit level, and I just make sure that I take the sort of, again, it's not perfect. It's within the remit of inaccuracies that spirit levels have. So you're going through judging on the bubble, and I want to make sure that this is flat to the camera, so that, again, sort of helping with any glare like that. And then I have 2 studio lights, sort of like this, pointing up at the ceiling, that then reflect down onto the painting. Now, when I take photos of my work, in terms of trying to sort of document and archive them, I make sure that one of these studio lights is offset to the other. So I normally have one up higher so that it's having a stronger reflection from the ceiling. So when the light bounces back down, you're still getting even light, so it's not it's direct light, so it's bounced light back onto the painting, but it offsets the strength. So this lower light has more time to diffuse before it bounces onto the painting, and as a result you get a very, very subtle sort of interaction with the thickness of paints. And that's how I can take photos of like texture of paintings and still get that sort of like feel of it having brushwork in it. That's not the best that's not the best diagram. Definitely, unless I'm describing it, isn't very useful, but I hope that helps a bit in terms of taking photos. Other than that, best bet is to go outside on a very overcast day, and try and take it's JN Jennifer Nocta. Oh, I recognize Jennifer Nocta from doing one of the challenges. But yeah, I hope that helps. Oh, it's really interesting how I've very, very abruptly discovered that I find it quite difficult to paint without like, my feet are doing quite a lot when I'm painting, which sounds very stupid. I definitely didn't expect it, but no, like, there's quite a lot of painting in which, like, I am lifting my leg up, I'm going on the tips of my toes in order to like push my arm up, because I rest my arm on my knee quite often, and because my feet feel like they're currently dying best parts of the day, it's been really strange to sort of realize how much I'm moving my feet when I'm painting, to the point of which I'm like, even sometimes like trying to grip my easel by like with my toes to stop it moving if I'm doing like harsh movements with my brush. Very, very strange. But yeah, apparently when I'm painting, my feet are also doing stuff, which is weird. And it's only when you can't do that anymore, or that you are sort of trying to stop yourself from doing that, that you're like, oh, I do this quite a lot. But yes, enough about my feet. I'm very glad that you were able to change your name. No, yeah, it is helpful to be able to sort of place people, I guess, and be like, yes, okay, this is the person who painted this is this person from my streams, or like the person who asked this question sort of is currently taking photos of their work like this, so I can suggest this or whatever. It's just a bit more information. Do you ever take out individual paintings when you're done with them and out of the sketchbook? Is that SkyLS? Let me work a bit more on these purples. Also, not to just have this as a massive rant stream. I would really appreciate it if people were ill on the train with like coughs and colds and whatever, but just wear masks. Like wearing a mask on a train is very, very easy. Anyway, I'm definitely not going to get into that. Yeah, so I don't know if you can see it too well. If I shift, in fact, let me just, before I do this, let me just put a mark there so I know where to put the sketchbook, which I didn't do last time. So there's this seam in Moleskines. Now, generally, when books are bound in like quantities of 8 pages. I don't know why, but if you ever look at getting a book printed, generally you sort of are asked to round it up to the nearest 8 or multiple of 8. So with Moleskines in specific, or in particular, sort of we have the seam here on this page, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 until you get to the next seam. So if you take a knife or a pair of scissors and just snip these bits of string and take them all out, the page will just come out without sort of any resistance, and you don't need to tear it out or anything. Beyond that, when the paintings live in the sketchbooks until they are sold. Upon selling, or sort of that sort of stage of work, I then take them out of the book and then use glue and glue them to a panel so that they are a bit more a bit safer in transport. Shipping work that's just on paper, I mean, you can just ship it with boards and stuff, but it's generally better to sort of glue it. Well, I say that. The most common scenario that I face is that if I sell one of these paintings that people want them framed, you shouldn't frame oil paintings for like 7 years after an oil painting is like done technically, because, and if you ever do, you'll see it that you get this oily scum on the inside of the glass of the frame, and that's just from the oil evaporating from the painting and sort of ending up on the glass. It's very, very horrible, not very nice to clean, doesn't look good, sort of clouds up the glass. So as a result, you shouldn't frame oil paintings behind glass unless they're sort of very, very dry, sort of as dry as they're going to get. So as a result of that, if people want to frame work, it's very difficult to frame paintings or frame things on paper that aren't behind glass. So I glue things to panels so that they are easier to frame. I also am very happy to frame things myself because I build frames myself. If people sort of are willing or want that as a feature, I will also sort of offer that. If someone buys a painting, I'll be like, hey, would you like this framed? It's this much for this sort of type of painting. So that is some thoughts on that. Sophia, how dare you ask a lady that question? No, how dare you ask such a pertinent question? I am 29. I am 30 in May. I am a 1993 baby. As a result, I am a Taurus. And yeah, Jennifer Nocta. How did I learn to build frames? Lots of frustration. I had no idea. Sorry, pardon me. I had no idea exactly how frustrating frame building was going to be when I started it. Or started learning how to do it, which was probably 2016, I want to say. So it's been a few years at this point. One of the issues that I came across very, very early on was that I wanted to build frames out of a material called Polcore, which is essentially plastic wooding. Plastic. Oh my goodness, I've got spam. I don't even know how to deal with that. I've not had spam before. Because I'm on something else. Oh my goodness. No, yeah, I'm on Streamlabs, so I don't quite know how to deal with spam. I'm very, very sorry. Everyone's just gonna have to see the message of like hot photo of my sister, which is terribly grammatically incorrect. And I know that, and my grammar is bad. So anyway, yeah, like 2016, I wanted to build frames out of a material called Polcore. Polcore is essentially plastic molding, which is what you call the long strips of frame. That is very true. Maybe they do just have a hot sit. But Polcore is lighter than wood. It's also cheaper to buy in general because wood is very, very expensive. It's also, I don't know, there were lots of questions about like ethical frame building, I guess, sort of whether or not it was worth doing it in plastic, which is bad for obvious reasons, or whether or not it was worth doing it in wood, which is also bad for other reasons. Wood is also very expensive at the moment. For things, so there were lots of things that like, I'm gonna try and use Polcore. Turns out Polcore is really, really difficult to manipulate, very, very difficult to sort of like accurately cut. And as a result, sort of, you get a lot of, you have to be, there isn't the give that there is in wood. Like, wood sort of is a bit more malleable to get it into the right shape or the right sort of like angle. The big thing that it turns out with frames is that if one cut is like a tiny bit out, like you're talking like 0.0 of a degree, it sort of can throw out the entire frame, and as a result, sort of it's needs precision, and as a result of that, I sort of looked into various things. I don't use power tools because I would like to keep all of my fingers. So I cut them originally with a saw in a sort of mitre block, and then I use something called a mitre guillotine, which is also very, very finger chopping off territory. Very, very scary bit of equipment to be using. Importantly scary because it keeps you very, very sort of like aware of how accurate, like how well you actually need to be treating this bit of equipment, because it is, yeah, I could very easily do big damage to myself if I wasn't paying attention, if I was using it as a thing. I have a mitre guillotine that's by a brand called, it's either Axe Caliber or Axe Minster or something like that. And that essentially just allows you to get a really clean finish, very clean cut, that is set to 45 degrees. So it's always, it's not always, it is sort of working within those remits. But I taught myself, I sort of just have some experience just building things in the past in general. I've always been one to sort of quite curious to figure things out in like that in general. Decided it was a thing that I would find very, very helpful for shows. At the time, I sort of was showing at a small gallery in the city where I live, or a city by where I lived, and like sort of was taking paintings that were odd sizes because I wasn't painting on like standardized sizes. I was just painting whatever I could, and I'd take them to a framer and be like, hey, how much would this be framed? And it would be like £200. And it's like, okay, that's more than I'm looking at selling this painting for, so that is not really feasible. So yeah, it was sort of out of necessity that I was like, okay, I just need to stick through with this. It was incredibly frustrating, because I was just going from it from start. Funnily enough, this is a topic that I have considered talking about as a video topic, like how to sort of navigate making simple frames, but again, you'd have to buy some equipment. Like, there is no way that you can do it with just standard equipment. Like, even mitre saws are very, very inaccurate, and it's all about accuracy. It's like you have to be accurate. Mitre guillotines aren't super expensive. They're not like inaffordable for, at least for some artists. As with many things, if you have people around you, I would suggest sort of trying to do it as a community. Like, if there's 3 or 4 of you in a space or something, or you have a few local painters that are sort of will also want it, it's like, well, okay, why don't we buy this together, and then we can frame our work together. In the same way that I feel like that is how people should try and take photos of the artwork and stuff. If you can sort of clobber together and get a decent camera between sort of 3 or 4 of you, then you can always take photos together. I live sort of in the middle of nowhere, and I don't have any art friends that live within 20 miles of me, so it's never been sort of feasible or sort of sensible for them to come over. But if I ever had a sort of more centralized place, studio or something, like in London or something, I would literally just invite people over to take photos of their work for like the price of a coffee. Like, if they bought me a coffee, I will take photos of your work. But yeah, because it's, yeah, once everything's set up, it's just a question of swapping out the pieces. But it's the setup that takes a long time. But yeah, it's something that you could look at doing as a sort of small band of artists together, in a perfect world, in a nice world where people do that. I am West Sussex is sort of the best place to describe that. So I sort of am vague. I know a few artists in the Brighton scene, and sort of if I go to life drawing or anything, I go down to Draw generally because that's the closest one to me. and I teach in London. I teach at the Art Academy, which is in London Bridge. And at the moment, I'm teaching their drop-in life drawing. So sort of I do both Friday nights and Sundays in London Bridge, which you can drop in and come and draw from life and hear me prattle in real life, as well as in if anyone is in London, that is, which would be a pleasure to sort of to have you. That being said, this Sunday I had to miss yesterday's lesson because I don't feel well, and next Sunday is our last Sunday of this term, so we are breaking up in 6 days for half term. There is a Christmas fair happening, but I don't think I'm able to go. I also don't think I'm going to be able to go to the tutor party at the at this current rate because feeling rough, but we'll see. But no, yeah, it's a really nice sort of space to be making work or sort of teaching at that place. I studied at the Art Academy, and I studied there before it was associated with the OU, the Open University. So Jennifer, how important do you think drawing is to painting? I mean, proportions are obviously required, but no, yeah, have a friend that makes some frames. No, I'm kind of glad I've made a few frames for a few friends in the past. Framing is very, it's not a quick process, or at least it's not very quick for me because nothing is set up, so I have to reset everything up. And beyond that as well, I am sort of unwell in general. Like, I don't have like amazing health in general, and soaring and things like that are definitely very strenuous things to be doing. So I'm sort of okay to do it for my own needs, but if lots of people wanted it, I'd sort of outsource it. I think I have a few friends that are carpenters and stuff, and I'm sure that they wouldn't mind the work. Thank you very much, Chris. I hope I will be better by Sunday. Yes, I feel like stuff that I'm not allowed to say on YouTube, or shouldn't say on YouTube. For Jennifer's question, I do think drawing is really important to painting. It depends on what sort of painting you want to be doing. I have talked quite a lot about sort of how, in the past at least, or recently, how one of the things that I have decided is like key for my work, one of the main things that I want to be doing with my paintings is creating believable scenarios of light. For that to be the case, the drawing just has to be right. Like, if the drawing isn't right, then it doesn't matter what I'm doing with the tonality on top of it. It doesn't matter what I'm doing with the mark making. It doesn't matter what I'm doing with the values or the color. If the drawing isn't right, the light won't read right. So for my own paintings, drawing has become a lot more important recently. In the past, drawing hasn't been the main focus. I've always been sort of more considerate of marks and mark making, and I think it's really helpful to sort of identify what you are wanting from your painting, because if you sort of come to the conclusion that like, okay, these don't need to be sort of like, I'm not trying to describe this person in particular, I am just describing sort of the feeling of this or whatever it might be, then drawing becomes not as important, but it's obviously yeah, sorry, it's getting confused by questions. Yeah, it definitely sort of can be something that can become secondary to your practice. I think though, knowing how to do it and then sort of choosing whether or not you are that concerned about it, or sort of if it's the most prevalent thing in your practice, is definitely the better sort of scenario. So sort of understanding. I also think that in general everybody should go to life drawing because I just think it's a good place to experiment and sort of get better at drawing through those manners. But there are lots of fantastic artists who don't draw, or like don't have drawing as like main parts of their practice, and that's fine. I also definitely think that there is a difference between drawing for painting and drawing for drawing. Again, I sort of mention it semi-frequently. The under drawing that I did for this painting isn't the type of drawing that I would be doing if I was just going to draw this painting, just draw this image. I would just sort of tackle it in a different manner to begin with, and again, that's fine. So you can learn to draw for painting in a different way to drawing for drawing, if that makes any sense. I definitely am feeling the fatigue set in, the ill fatigue. Fortunately, I don't feel like this is super far off sort of being brought to a resolution for today. Yeah, like as you say, Michael, like the Polcore frames definitely felt very not nice to work with. It's always nice to meet a framer in a glazier. In fact, we were talking about befriending glaziers in one of the art chats recently, because if you go to a local glazier, then you can get art palettes for a lot less than like buying them from art shops, and all you need is a bit of toughened glass that's protected on the, or like rounded on the edges so it doesn't and anyway, the I can't even remember what I was saying. Yeah, composite frames. A lot of the frames that I build now are veneered as well. Like I would absolutely hate to think about how much like proper wood is in that scenario, because the frames like, again, it's by no means cheap to the sort of materials that I use, but they are still like veneered softwood, and I presume that if you were using proper hardwood like oak or something, or yeah, it would be a lot more expensive. Is I would hazard a guess, but that is just a guess as well. But yeah, it definitely seems like the price of wood is it's high, understandably as well, because it takes a lot of resources to sort of be made. So I'm noticing that I definitely want to warm up, but also darken this area of the neck. I also want to get some texture happening in the mark making here to sort of guide the eye around a bit. Let's try and resolve the lips a bit more as well. Something like that. Let's go brighter still, where they really do catch the light just at the tip here. And then let's recut in that warm. Something like that. Now, I'm starting to sort of believe the lighting scenario a bit here. There is an element that I really want to try and capture the full extent of, and bear with me as I try to describe this in a clear manner whilst done. Also painting and feeling. So there is an element of light, and as I mentioned, really sort of curious about accurately capturing elements of light. That's sort of been the main goal with a lot of my work. Not every painting, but I'm sort of definitely thinking about that with every painting. We can witness this sort of event that happens, a sort of interaction between light and skin. Happens with other materials as well, but sort of obviously in these scenarios it's sort of relating to humans and bodies, which is an element called subsurface scattering. Now, subsurface scattering is a term that's thrown around a lot in like CG worlds, so computer graphics, for video games, movies, whatever. And subsurface scattering is the effects of light bouncing into the body, bouncing through the first layers of skin, and then sort of bouncing back out. Now, sometimes that light sort of, if you imagine you've got layers of skin, sometimes that light goes on the edge and bounces back. Sometimes it bounces in, sometimes it bounces further in, sometimes it bounces further in than that, sometimes it bounces here and then bounces back and sort of bounces in between these two a bit and then bounces back out. There's lots of different elements in which this light can affect. There is a result of this that when it passes through skin, it catches the sort of effect of what's happening under the skin. So it's sort of the flesh, the blood, the arteries, the capillaries, the veins, whatever you sort of want to talk about what it's affecting with that light. It's bouncing back out. Which means that in elements where you see things like ears or nostrils or edges or corners of bodies, like it's happening in the eyebrows here, it's sort of happening in the straw as well. There is light entering at this end of this sort of angle and then sort of bouncing in between and then coming out at this terminator line, but sort of coming out increased in its chromatic value of being more red because of subsurface scattering. So there's an effect in the eyebrow where this is happening, where the eyebrow is sort of being almost lit from within, to sort of cause a glow. Now, it's a subtle sort of thing. It's a thing that painters have observed for many centuries at this point. I personally have found it very helpful to sort of like physically try and understand what is happening with the light, so I can sort of try to mimic what's happening, or at least understand why it might look a specific way. And as a result of that, that's been a very yeah, and it's like a lot of the time, Alex, like with loading the ears with like CAD Red, you can get away with it because people understand it to be sort of like, it's sort of almost societally known that people can have really red ears or really red elbows or really red nostrils or whatever. So you can sort of start to lean into it a bit and sort of describe that light with a bit more stylistic choices, but still have it being read correctly because you're still working within the same understanding of light. You're just sort of maybe tweaking it, like in certain elements, just sort of pushing it a bit more. But yeah, it happens a lot in a lot of different scenarios, and I definitely really like trying to notice it and sort of trying to capture that correct effect of it. And yeah, I can definitely sort of see it happening in this eye, and the nostril, this nostril. So I'm sort of going to try and resolve that a bit. I want to also just finish putting in some sort of tonality for the eyes to sort of get rid of the white that is currently in the eyes. And then that also makes me want to bring the iris over a bit to make that feel a bit more balanced. Let's obviously the all important sound effects of the of painting, the swoops, the fuzzes. Now let's reduce this information here because that's too noisy for what that is. Oh, something like that. Yes, he says tentatively. Now, this reference is from the Kanyo reference, public reference. I think her name is Denali. So, I believe that's the case at least. So, I am umming and erring about throwing the Kanyo link, public ref link, in the chat or in the description for one of these videos. I think most of the people in here anyway are already in those chats anyway. But I don't want to overwhelm any of the admins or anything at the moment, because I am not doing any admin things at the moment because I'm too focused on work and painting, really. So I'm not really in the chats other than to chat a lot of the time. But if you're watching the stream and you're not in the public ref, do just send me a message and I can add you. You do need Telegram though, which is a scary Russian app. Now, I definitely want to knock that blue in as well on the eye, just to shape this eye a bit more. Same sort of thing, just want to increase this chromatic value of this eye to make it feel like the light is interacting inside. I need to revisit that shadow as well because that highlight looks wrong. No, yeah, I too get lost with all the apps and all the there's so many chats at this point, and like I was thinking the other day, like, oh, I should do like a Discord or something for my stuff, and like the competitions or the calls or the prompts or whatever it is, giveaways that I've been doing, but also for people to share their work. And I think that definitely will come at some point. I don't know whether or not it's going to be Discord. I don't know whether it's going to be Telegram. But it's not something I have the capacity to sort of do at the moment. But yeah, if you are interested in that, or sort of would be interested in that, then please do let me know, and I can sort of line that up so that can be a thing in the future. But yeah, there are so many things, so many apps to sort of juggle, I guess, at this point. But fortunately, with certain parts of social media exploding the way they are, like Twitter and stuff, it sort of simplifies the amount of apps that you might need in some scenarios. It's like, okay, don't need to worry about Twitter at the moment. Twitter is dumpster fire. So. Now there is that slight highlight in that shadow. I definitely need to bring in some better definition for this eye though, because this eye is just getting more lost. And it is quite dark because it is in the shadows on this side. That looks a bit clearer. I'm actually going to cut this entire eye back slightly, something like that, and then re-establish this edge just a bit further over. It feels a bit more, it gives the bridge of the nose a bit more space, which it definitely needed. Now let's go in again, very vibrant sort of edges around the nose. This whole shadow as well, this shadow, this cast shadow by the nose, same sort of effect is happening because the light is passing, the light from up here is hitting the nose and causing a cast shadow, this shape here. But because the nose is flesh, it is see-through, so the light is passing through the nose, and also so when it causes this cast shadow, it's also increasing that sort of warmth as well. So really warm sort of shadow shape there. And this edge of the chin as well definitely has maybe a bit too much, but it's a nice start to work out from. Something like that. Yeah, that looks okay, I guess. It's definitely interesting as well, sort of having the work that I've been working on personally. The work that I've been working on personally, there is no guessing or anything. It's like if I'm not 100% happy with how it looks, then it gets revisited, re-evaluated and redone, which is definitely not a scenario that I've had, or sort of a mindset that I've had for a very, very long time. It's sort of been, paintings have been a bit more about what can be done in brevity, and that definitely still is part of my practice. That's something I sort of am trying to sort of work on individually and sort of have its specific time to be working on that, such as this, where it's like I'm specifically trying to resolve a painting in the time slot of like 3 hours or whatever, whereas the work outside of it, it's like, no, I will repaint a bit 100 times if I need to make it look correct, which is also why sort of the presentation things have come into more of a sort of conversation, more something that I actually need to work on. Because it's like, oh yeah, if I'm spending all this time working on these paintings, I really don't want to just throw them up. I want to sort of present them properly. At least that is part of that engagement, in part of that conversation. Now do something like this. Also, just out of just because of what it is, and the fact that I'm not giving this painting away because it's just a painting for painting's sake. This painting will be going onto my website. I might try and see if I can sneakily do a discount for the people watching the stream. I don't know how I would do that, but if I put it online, and if you watch the stream and you're listening to this message, then you know that you can message me, and I will offer you this painting at a discount, or give you a discount code for this painting. Once it is uploaded. But if not, no matter. Let's deal with this nostril. And then cut that in. I definitely sort of, yeah, I'm gonna see if I can get away with an outrageously pink mark or red mark. The original intention was to paint a gift for my father, because this stream, so far the streams have had prompts that people can get involved in and paint along the same thing, limited palettes. The prompt for this stream was going to be a gift, like a Christmas or a holiday gift. So originally I was going to be painting something for my dad as a gift, but then the thing that I ordered to paint, because it was a thing that when we were walking around the Mall galleries recently, it was a painting that he particularly liked. I was like, okay, yep, I'm gonna try and do a painting like that. I'm interested in trying to do something like this, but my own spin on it. Essentially, it's just the still life of, I'm not gonna say, just in case he watches, but it's a still life. And then I felt bad enough that it was like, nope, my only concern is that I want to actually do a painting. So I'm just gonna paint for fun. And just do a painting and chat instead of putting any pressure on it. And then when I'm feeling better, next week, hopefully, I can do one of the original prompts. But yeah, so not for this painting. There is still a giveaway with this stream though, which will be, I'll announce it on the on my Instagram as when I upload this painting as well. And that still is to paint a gift. So if you've got a gift that you're sort of planning to paint for someone for Christmas, or the holidays in general, and you paint that within the next week and tag me in it, and sort of let me know that it is the painting for the gift giveaway. I'm gonna choose my favorite out of those, and they're gonna receive one set of this palette, or a close approximation for this palette. So definitely still a sort of incentive to get people painting. It's just this time it's not a painting giveaway. It's a palette giveaway. But yeah, as I mentioned, I do have one of the objects that I was planning to do a still life stream of as well, and have the prompt of a still life has come today. So I will be setting that up as well. I think within the next sort of like 10 minutes maybe, as long as nothing goes horrendously wrong. That will be the end of this painting, the end of the stream. So if you do have any questions or anything, or any comments or anything like that, please do say now before the stream ends. I had some feedback that the because of the delay in when I say stuff originally and when I read comments because of the time it takes to upload and stuff, that it's a bit abrupt at the end. But yeah, so if you notice as well how much my white paint has slid down this glass palette, which is always funny when you put it in the time lapse. But yeah, yeah. Any comments? Any questions? Anything like that about this painting before the painting stream ends? Do let me know. Something like that. No, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the company as well, Sophia. Like, I have a feeling that if I didn't do the stream, I'm sort of there's a thing years ago that there was an old YouTuber called Charlie McDonald. Charlie is so cool, like that used to talk about called like don't break the chain, and you would sort of put X's on a calendar for every time you did something, and the whole idea was that you would sort of implement good habits. And I definitely felt like that with the stream. Like I was like, it's been like this is like the first month of streaming. I'm sure that there will be times in the future where I will be too ill to paint. This isn't one of them, and I definitely wanted to sort of make the extra effort to do so. But yeah, it's been a nice little fun painting. No stresses with the painting itself, which is always quite nice. And yeah, it's been nice company. And if not, I would have just been playing like Fortnite or something. So there we go. Let's get a chromatic edge in here. Something like that. Jennifer, thank you. Yeah, painting, talking. As you can see, sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't go well. Lots of times I'm like trying to process thoughts. But this painting has not done with one brush, Chris. That this painting has been done with, I think, 2 brushes. So it's not quite a 1 brush painting. Maybe 3 brush. But no, yeah. Sometimes it depends on sort of the complexity of the thing that I'm painting. Faces, I am quite comfortable with because I've painted a lot of faces over the years, so I sort of know what I'm looking for and where I'm sort of trying to, where I might need to focus. And then other paintings, it's like a bit of a newer engagement, newer setting, where it's like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, talking and painting. I'm looking forward to those a lot and seeing how those go. Definitely. Sorry. Definitely with still life. Still lifes are a thing that I've really don't have too much experience with it. In terms of painting still lifes, I think I could count them all on one hand. I think it's about I think it's less than 5 still lifes that I've done in the last 10 years. So that's part of the reason that I particularly wanted to do it as a one of the prompts, because I want to round out some of my skills for things like that I'm not doing. And if I say it to people beforehand that I'm going to be doing a specific painting, provided that I'm not ill, I will sort of have to do that, you know, sort of stick to those words. And that is a good way to motivate myself personally to sort of try out a few different things, a few different painting scenarios. Now, I think let's just see if I can remove some of the under drawing marks. It doesn't look too shabby. And then something like that. Catch the light. It's funny with the painting that has that stamp and reel for painting called Ocean Breathes Salty, which is some Modest Mouse lyrics. When I first did that, obviously I put my big juicy thumbprint on the painting as a sort of part of like, hey, look, I'm signing this. I'm literally putting my like stamp of this is done on it by putting my thumbprint on it. And then I sort of was to a few friends about it and was like, oh, what do you think? And the comments were overwhelmingly like, oh yeah, don't do that, because people will steal your identity by stealing your thumbprint. And I was like, okay, I guess I won't do that. But yeah. Yeah, I think that is I think I'm gonna call that done there. Sorry. Thank you for bearing with me. Spluttering and coughing and stuff as I've been painting. And yeah, it's been a fun painting session. So thank you very much for keeping me company. I am gonna go flop in bed with a hot water bottle after I can take a photo and put this online. But yeah, it's been a pleasure, and thank you very much for joining. And yeah, I'll catch you over on Insta for any comments or anything like that. So yeah, I will be with you on that platform in a bit. And you can sort of see a nice proper version of the painting where hopefully you can see all of the qualities of Mark. But yes, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening.